Walter's Sports Bar has been recognized by many local publications as one of the best sports bars in Washington, D.C., located across the street from Nationals Park and open year-round.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
To the count. Weems sets. Bases loaded. Ninth man to bat in the pitch. Swung on. Line drive. Base hit. Left center field. Frelick scores from third. Monasterio around third coming in to score. Over to third is Perkins. On a single to left center and 2 runs batted in for Eric Haas. And it's now the Brewers 5 and the Nationals nothing.
The 0-1. Swinging a drive. Left center field. Chasing back on this one. Perkins to the warning track at the wall. He leaps and it's gone. It's a pinch hit home run to the opposite field for Luis Garcia. It's now a 1-run game.
The kick and the pitch. Swing and a long drive. Deep right. Way back. Going. Gone. Goodbye. Into the second deck in right field. A tremendous home run for CJ Abrams. And the Nationals down 5-0 in the bottom of the first inning have come all the way back to take the lead here in the top of the ninth at American Family Field. Bang! Zoom goes CJ Abrams with his 15th home run of the year.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Sunday, July 14th, 2024. What is the final day of the pre-All-Star break portion of MLB's 2024 season. What also is the first day of the 2024 MLB Draft, in which the Nationals have the number 10 overall pick, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who is at American Family Field in Milwaukee. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast, and I do believe that we just witnessed the Nats' best win of this season so far. Saturday, a 6-5 win at the National League Central leading Milwaukee Brewers in a game in which the Nats overcame a 5-0 deficit. The Nats won despite their starting pitcher, Mitchell Parker, lasting for just 2/3 of an inning. 5 Nats relievers officially combined for 8 1/3 shutout innings with 10 strikeouts. CJ Abrams in a 2-run ninth for the Nats smashed a 1-out 2-run homer off Brewers closer Trevor McGill to the second deck in right field for a 6-5 Nats lead. Luis Garcia Jr. off the bench provided 2 big leadoff hits, including a home run. And the final out, it came on a leaping backhanded catch at the right field wall by right fielder Lane Thomas, who of course has had difficulty over time dealing with fly balls toward outfield walls. But in that spot, the Lane train came through. This was a game that went from looking like a blowout loss for the Nats to a spectacular win for the Nats. And then the Nats, shortly after 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, announced a trade. They announced having traded reliever Hunter Harvey to the Kansas City Royals in a trade that I love from a Nats perspective. We'll get to that. But Mark, we have a lot to discuss, my friend.
This turned into quite the eventful day, Al, and day and night, as it turned out. And we'll get to the trade, and there's a lot to say about that, both in terms of this specific trade and maybe what it suggests in the larger picture. But as far as the game itself, you called it their best win. I think it's appropriate to question if it is their best win of the year. I think it's, without question, their most remarkable win. Because if you think about everything they had to have happen in order to win that game after falling behind 5-0 and seeing Mitchell Parker knocked out in the bottom of the first. Everything that had to happen, they all happened. None of them was easy. They all required some impressive efforts from a bunch of different people in a bunch of different roles. And to end on a catch like that from that particular player, remarkable is just the word that I keep coming up with. It was a remarkable job by them to claw their way back and ultimately win that game in such a dramatic fashion.
It's such a funny deal with the Nats offense because in like 80% of their games this season, the offense is bad. But there's that other 20% in which the offense is good, in which the offense comes through. And this was one of those games. This was a game, they're down 5-0 after the first inning. And obviously you don't feel great about the Nats winning the game. But you also recognize, inevitably, Nats games this season are close. And it feels like every game finds its way to being close. And so at 5-0, I don't know about you, I kind of had this feeling of, I wouldn't be stunned if the Nats rally to make this a game because it just feels like every Nats game this season is decided by 3 runs or less. And sure enough, this ended up being a win for the Nats. A 1-run win. There were so many heroes for the Nats in this game, but let's identify the 2 big offensive heroes, and I mentioned them in the opening portion of the show here. CJ Abrams. CJ Abrams, he's actually not having a very good month of July. He's having this very odd season, good in April, bad in May, good in June, and now his July has not been going too well. But man, did he come through with a huge homer on Saturday. Abrams as the Nats starting shortstop and number 1 batter, 1 for 5, but the 2-run homer. And how about this spot? A 2-run Nats ninth, a 1-out 2-run shot off the Brewers closer, Trevor McGill, who had been brought into the game in the 8th inning. You wonder to what extent that might have impacted him in that 9th inning. And this wasn't some El Cheapo shot. This was a homer to the second deck in right field. The homer went a projected 416 feet per StatCast. And you talk about pimping a home run. Abrams made contact, and Abrams stood and admired that bad boy for quite some time. He enjoyed that, and justifiably so.
And looked back at the dugout, which is something that he does a lot to kind of embrace his teammates in that moment. He has had a knack for a lot of things since arriving here, but he has definitely had a knack for the dramatic and for doing things like that in meaningful moments, especially late in games. And that's such a great quality to have in a young star shortstop. That was one of those that the moment it left the bat, you knew it, he knew it, everybody in the ballpark knew it, and he enjoyed it to be sure. I do feel like since he was named an all-star, all of a sudden, all that great production he had kind of tailed off a little bit. He, of course, had the pretty egregious error on Friday night, then a great defensive play later on in that game, and at the plate had not quite looked like himself. So maybe this is the swing that kind of gets him back on the track that he was on, which was so good for, throughout the month of June and earned him that all-star spot. I like the way that he seems to rise to the occasion. This is a guy who's not afraid to be in the spotlight, is not afraid to kind of be the face of the team right now. And I think it's a good spot for him. And as he gains experience and as he comes up more and more in these kind of spots, I think you're going to see more of this kind of thing from him. And what a thing it is to have that from a leadoff hitting shortstop.
And as up and down as he has been this season offensively, on a team that so rarely provides extra base hits, the frequency with which he generates extra base hits is really worth highlighting. CJ Abrams this regular season has 94 hits. 41 of the 94 have been extra base hits. Nearly half of his hits have been extra base hits. He's got an on-base percentage of .344, a slugging percentage of .486, and of course he is the Nats' lone all-star for this season. So big home run from CJ Abrams and 2 big hits off the bench for Luis Garcia Jr. How good has he been lately? Garcia did not start this game, but he sure as heck finished this game. He came off the bench to play second base, delivered 2 big leadoff hits, and going 2 for 2 with a leadoff solo homer and a leadoff single. Garcia in the Nats' 1-run 7th, a pinch leadoff homer to left center field to cut the Nats deficit to 5-4, and Garcia in that Nats 2-run 9th, leadoff first pitch single to right field. Have we ever seen him hit with this kind of confidence? He seems to be locked in right now. He seems to be blossoming into the batter we always knew he could be. We had saw flashes of him being this guy, but he now consistently, for at least a few weeks now, has been that guy.
4 homers in his last 9 games, and those haven't been cheapies either. He is really hitting the ball with authority, and that has been great to see. And to do it coming off the bench, I'm sure there were people that saw the lineup when it came out and said, why aren't you starting Garcia against a lefty? Or isn't it time to find out how he can do against them? And while I agree with that to some extent, I think there was some thought process here, which was save him along with Jesse Winker. There were several moves Davey made over the course of this game to try to play some matchups. And I think Garcia was one of them to say, let me wait until the spot is right and I can get him up there in a favorable matchup. And instead of having him hit for the second baseman, Vargas, he hits for the third baseman, Lipscomb. Ends up with the huge home run. And let's not forget the leadoff single to open the ninth and get himself into scoring position so that CJ Abrams really just needed a single to drive him in and tie the game. Of course, he ends up scoring on the home run that helps them win the game. But really good at bats from Garcia lately. And I agree, this is a different hitter that we're seeing now over the last several weeks. You just hope he can continue that, because this would be a major development for him and for the Nationals if he can start doing this with some consistency and legitimately seize that second base job that we've kind of wondered for a few years. Is he the guy? Is he not the guy? He hasn't fully seized it yet, but he's on the right track between the offensive improvement recently and the defensive improvement all year long. He is making a case for himself if he can keep this up.
A third offensive hero for the Nats in this 6-5 come-from-behind win at the Brewers on Saturday, Juan Yepez. It was only just 2 Fridays ago, July 5th, that the Nats announced that they had selected the contract of Juan Yepez from AAA Rochester. Yepez has done so well that he on Saturday was the Nats' number 3 batter. I mean, 9 days ago, if someone had said to you, Juan Yepez is going to be the Nats' number 3 batter for a game coming up in a handful of days, you would have said, what? Who? Yeah, that guy, number 3 batter, starting first baseman on Saturday. 2 more hits, another double for Yepez, 2 for 4 with a double, a single, and a walk. Yepez in the top of the first, a 1-out double down the left field line. Yepez in the Nats' 3-run fourth, a leadoff full count single to left center field. And Yepez in the top of the 8th, a leadoff walk. We have been talking about him. We're going to keep talking about him until he stops producing. Juan Yepez, since being promoted to the majors, 9 games, batting average of .353, on base percentage .436, slugging percentage of .529. He, to me, right now is giving the Nats their best plate appearances. Like, he goes up there, he's acting as a smart batter, he's drawing walks, he's providing doubles like crazy. This has been a pleasant surprise what the Nats have gotten from Juan Yepez.
And what's interesting is he doesn't necessarily drive the ball to the gaps or hit him to the wall. Like, these doubles are basically down the lines, often on the ground or like low line drives. And that's fine. It's good bat control. It's hitting them where they ain't, obviously, and you hope he can keep that up. But it has made a huge difference. I mean, he hit third for them in this game, in a game that they started against a lefty. That shows how far, just in the course of a week, he's gone to earn the manager's trust and allowed Davey to not have to stack lefties at the top of a lineup against an opposing lefty, to have him there and do that. It's been good. It's certainly been better than they were getting from first base, from Joey Meneses, and really from Joey Gallo as well. And we're still a ways off from this, but it does create a little bit of an interesting question. Whenever Joey Gallo does return, how do they approach this? Is the first base job just his because of his defense and his propensity to occasionally hit some home runs? Or does Yepez do enough to say, hang on a second, I should be out there playing at least some of the time, if not a majority of the time? And then what happens to Gallo, especially if the trade deadline has already passed? I mean, that's a topic for down the road, and we've got plenty else to discuss today, but it does occur to you that he's creating a kind of a competition or an interesting question there that maybe none of us really expected at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that Jesse Winker's going to be traded, especially off Hunter Harvey now having been traded. So if that happens, then I suppose you could have Yepez as your regular DH and Gallo as your regular first baseman. But the doubles really are something. Joey Gallo this regular season, 46 games, 7 doubles. Juan Yepez this regular season at the major league level, 9 games, 6 doubles. He has 1 fewer double than Gallo has. Yepez has 3 fewer doubles than Keibert Ruiz has. I mean, Juan Yepez is really doing a terrific job. And then another thing with the Nats offense in this game. So we've talked about the 2-run ninth, the Garcia homer in the 7th, but what ignited the comeback was a 3-run top of the 4th that the Nats began with 5 consecutive hits off Dallas Keuchel, who was a massive disappointment from a Brewers perspective. The Brewers put up 5 runs in the bottom of the first, and yet their starting pitcher, Dallas Keuchel, lasted for just 3 innings in this game. You think about that, huge disappointment from a Milwaukee perspective, but that 3-run top of the fourth for the Nats, Juan Yepes leadoff single, James Wood single, Harold Ramirez RBI single, Ildemaro Vargas RBI double, Riley Adams RBI single, and just like that, this was a game again. It went from 5-0 to 5-3. That 5-batter sequence in the 3-run fourth was huge for the Nats.
As you said, at 5-0, you didn't really think they were out of the game, that they were going to have a chance to at least make this interesting. And I felt the same way. And one of the main reasons I felt that way was because Dallas Keuchel was the Brewers' starting pitcher. This guy has bounced around all over the place for several years. He is not the guy who won a Cy Young and was a stalwart of the Astros rotation a long time ago. It was funny going into the game. I was thinking about after the 2018 season, the Nationals knew they needed a left-handed starter to replace Gio Gonzalez. Patrick Corbin was by far their number one choice, but there was some concern that he was going to sign with the Yankees instead, being a native of New York State. And so Dallas Keuchel was the number 2 option there. And I never got the sense the Nats were that high on Keuchel, but if they didn't get Corbin, they may have felt compelled to go get Keuchel. And I understand the Corbin deal in the long run has been not exactly great from a financial standpoint, aside from what he did that first year to help them win a World Series. But Dallas Keuchel has not had any kind of career since then either, has bounced all over the place, has really struggled. I guess credit to him, he keeps getting opportunities, but it felt like to me, this is a guy they should be able to hit, and they absolutely got to him in that 4th inning, knocked him out of the game, and that changes the whole complexion of the game. And now it's like, okay, game on, it's 5-3, you just need to keep chipping away at this, and I give them credit for just good quality at bats, and not trying to get it all back at once, but understanding they had time on their side and ultimately a Brewers bullpen they could go after the rest of the way.
The Nats finished the game with 6 runs, 12 hits, and 2 walks, and 4 for 11 with runners in scoring position. The Nats in this series are doing a very good job when it comes to hitting with runners in scoring position.
Nats, who trailed 5-0 in the first inning, leading 6-5. Finnegan sets. Runner takes off for third. The pitch swung on, hit in the air to right field deep. Thomas going back, still back, warning track at the fence. He leaps, and he caught it. He caught it at the fence, and a Curly W's in the books.
Are you looking for tickets to an upcoming event? That's why you should download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code NATSCHAT for $20 off your first purchase. You get cheaper tickets, and it helps the podcast a bit. Sounds like a smooth 6-4-3 double play. Again, create an account and redeem the code NATSCHAT for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. With the finals over, the hoops action doesn't stop on Prize Picks. Women's basketball is still heating up. With stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves, alongside greats like Brianna Stewart and Asia Wilson, you could win up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. I know I'm looking at Clark and Stewart to put up more than their points projections, and I like Reese and Wilson to do the same to their points and rebounds combined projections too. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code BLUEWIRE for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code BLUEWIRE on Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
The best way to learn a language? Immersion. Living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But if that's not in the cards this year, you could still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Here's a special deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners for a limited time at babbel.com/natschat. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/natschat. That's spelled BABBEL.com/natschat. Rules and restrictions may apply.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Here's your Dylan Cruz report for Saturday. In the MLB Futures game, Cruz went 0 for 3 while was hit by a pitch and stole a base. He hit second and played right field. Now back to the show.
Now on 3-1, he should be ready. Parker sets and delivers. 3-1, ripped to left. That's a base hit down the left field line. Same pitch, same spot. Brewers are going to take the lead as Churio comes in to score. Around third, Ortiz heading home. He'll score on the throw from Wood. Missed the cutoff man, fielded by Lipscomb, the third baseman, in foul ground. And in at second base with a double and 2 runs batted in is Rhys Hoskins, his 9th double of the year. A 2-out, 2-run double. It's Milwaukee 2 and Washington nothing here at the bottom of the first.
So the Nats pitching in this 6-5 win at the Brewers on Saturday. This was something. Mitchell Parker, who has been a model of consistency, ended up having a blow-up start. He officially allowed 5 runs in 2/3 of an inning. First instance of a Nats starting pitcher not lasting for at least 3 innings this regular season. Gave up 3 hits, all of which were doubles. He issued 2 walks. He recorded 2 strikeouts. He threw 46 pitches, 28 strikes versus 18 balls. What's interesting to me, though, is that he'd only allowed 3 runs when Davey Martinez pulled him. Now, I'm not saying that Parker looked good, but I actually was a little surprised that Davey yanked him that quickly into the game, given the fatigue state of the Nats bullpen, and just given that you're so early into the game, maybe he can limit the damage to the 3 runs in the first inning, and maybe he can do the thing that we do see starting pitchers do. You get rocked in the first inning, but you hold on to pitch for at least 4 or 5 innings, and your final line ends up being like 5 runs in 5 innings when you give up 3 or 4 runs in the first inning, that kind of a thing. No, Davey was aggressive here. He yanked Mitchell Parker, and that proved to be a wise decision, at least for this game, because the Nats bullpen in this game ended up being sensational. 5 Nats relievers officially combined for 8 1/3 scoreless innings with 10 strikeouts. Now, Jordan Weems did give up a 2-run single. He and that Brewers 5-run first gave up a 2-out bases loaded 2-run single by the Brewers' number 9 batter, Eric Haas, to the left center field gap on an 0-2 pitch, no less, for a 5-0 Brewers lead. But Weems officially tossed 1 2/3 scoreless innings with 3 strikeouts. Jacob Barnes, 2 2/3 scoreless innings with 4 swinging strikeouts. Dylan Floro, scoreless and hitless, bottom of the 7th. Derek Law, perfect bottom of the 8th. And Kyle Finnegan, a scoreless and hitless bottom of the 9th, with that final out coming in dramatic fashion via the Lane Thomas catch. But how about that? Mitchell Parker lasts for 2/3 of an inning, and the bullpen ends up being outstanding, and the Nats win the game.
So here's the thing with the Parker decision. I think Davey would have preferred to do what you were describing. Somehow get him through the first, give him a breather, and hope that he can cobble together a few more innings for you and save a bullpen that we knew going into this game was already not going to be in great shape. And oh, by the way, didn't have the long man that they had a day earlier when they sent Yohan Adon down. Finally, a game that it would have worked to have somebody like that, and they did not have him. But here was the problem with Parker. It was the pitch count. 46 pitches to only 7 batters faced. That is a huge number. Anytime you get up to the 40 mark in one inning, it is major red flags, alarms going off, all the more so when it's a rookie. And so if you're the manager, you have to tread so carefully there. I looked it up. It's the second highest total ever for a national starter who only went one or fewer innings. The only guy to throw more was Jeremy Guthrie in the infamous disaster start in 2017 when he gave up 10 runs in the first inning and threw 47 pitches. But he faced like 12 batters as opposed to the 7 that Parker faced. So I think this was purely I can't take a chance on this kid who looks like he's a big part of our future suffering an arm injury because I'm trying to squeeze another couple of innings out of him. The number was just too high. And so he made the move, Davey did, that I know he didn't want to do, and he knew what the ramifications of that were going to be the rest of the game and then again on Sunday once we get to that point. But I think he could not in good conscience leave his young starter out there to throw any more than that.
So the Nats do have a new fresh arm in the bullpen. Eduardo Salazar, the Nats on Saturday afternoon announced that they had recalled him from AAA Rochester as the corresponding roster moved to optioning starting pitcher Jackson Rutledge to Rochester off Rutledge's pretty encouraging spot start in the Game 1 win on Friday night. But there is another fresh arm coming to the Nats bullpen because the Nats, after this game, announced having traded reliever Hunter Harvey, and there are all sorts of ramifications from this trade. So the Nats announced the trade. It is Hunter Harvey to the Kansas City Royals for third baseman Cayden Wallace and a competitive balance pick, what is the number 39 overall pick in the 2024 MLB Draft, which gets going on Sunday night. Ergo, the urgency for this trade to be made because Rizzo wanted that pick for Sunday night. Cayden Wallace, interesting guy. He is the Royals' number 2, or I should say was the Royals' number 2 overall prospect per MLB pipeline. Now, he's not a top 100 prospect. Let's make that clear. But if you're ranking Royals prospects, Cayden Wallace was number 2 per MLB pipeline. The Royals took Wallace in the second round of the 2022 MLB Draft out of the University of Arkansas this season, his age 22 season. And the Nats getting the number 39 overall pick in the 2024 draft gives them 3 of the top 44 picks in the draft. The numbers 10, 39, and 44 overall picks. And from a Nats perspective, I don't know how you don't love this. The Nats have turned a guy who, remember, was claimed off waivers in Hunter Harvey, March 2022. The Nats claimed Harvey off waivers from the San Francisco Giants, the oft-injured Hunter Harvey. The Nats got him. The Nats got pretty good production out of him. And the Nats now have turned him into the Royals' number 2 prospect and the number 39 overall pick in an MLB draft. And this is with Hunter Harvey having 1 season left of team control and is with his season having come down back to earth a bit. Like Harvey is not at his peak level, at least in terms of where he had been this season. I love this from Mike Rizzo. I think this is a great trade from a Nats perspective.
So we had been talking for a little while about would he look to trade Harvey and Finnegan, knowing they each had another year of control, knowing that the hope around here is that this team is ready to contend in 2025. And do you want to break up a bullpen that has been very good for them and an area that has been so difficult for them to assemble over the years in good times and bad? And my feeling was that I didn't think he was necessarily motivated to trade those guys, but if somebody came through with an offer that he couldn't say no to, that he would do that. Well, this to me on the surface looks like an offer you could not say no to, given what we're talking about. I did not expect for them to be getting a prospect of that caliber and a draft pick. And the draft pick, I think, is the key to it all. And it's not something I thought about. It's not something they've done before. It's a relatively new rule. You can't trade just any draft pick. It's only these competitive balance picks. The Royals were awarded one of these basically because they were a bottom 10 revenue team in the majors last year. So you get a pick between the first and second rounds, and you may trade that pick. So the fact that that was now available, and it's the day before the draft, and now, as you said, you can have 3 of the top 44 picks at your disposal. That, to me, I'm guessing, I haven't had time to check with anyone on this yet, but I'm guessing that was really the clincher in Mike Rizzo's mind. Yes, you get a nice-looking prospect who could be one of several third base candidates for you in the near future. We'll have to see how that all works out. But the fact you now have your new scouting department with the ability to go draft and ultimately sign a player that you like, that you choose, is huge for them. So I think that's a big part of it, whether or not Wallace even turns into anything for them. And the hope would be that he does turn into something for them.
And just from an asset management standpoint, that again, you take a waiver claim, you have him for 2+ seasons. I mean, Harvey's numbers for the Nats over 2+ regular seasons: 138 games, 145 innings, ERA of 3.17, WHIP of 1.083, strikeouts per 9 innings of 10.1. That's pretty good production. The Nats largely kept him healthy off him having had such a hard time staying healthy during his time with the Orioles. So you get him for nothing. You get decent production out of him, and now you flip him for a decent prospect, if not a good prospect, and a number 39 overall pick of the draft. Just tremendous stuff by Mike Rizzo. Now, what does this say to you about how the Nats are approaching this year's trade deadline? I think that's the other really interesting aspect of this. So the deadline is coming up. As we've discussed, this All-Star game is super late this year. So the All-Star game is happening Tuesday, July 16th. 2 Tuesdays later is the trade deadline, Tuesday, July 30th at 6 p.m. Eastern. This would seem to indicate that Mike Rizzo is looking at the Nats as being sellers. And this would seem to indicate that Kyle Finnegan is there to be had, in addition to the obvious guy in Jesse Winker, and maybe Lane Thomas, to whatever extent he has trade value, is there to be had with him having just 1 season left of team control. Is that how you see it, or not necessarily?
Yeah, so I think going into this, we all knew Jesse Winker, probably a guarantee. Dylan Floro on a 1-year deal, probably a guarantee. And the real question was, what about the guys who have another year of control? And as I said, I think in those cases, it's case by case based on what kind of offers you get. Remember, a year ago, he listened to offers for Lane Thomas, Kyle Finnegan. I think Harvey was out at that point, so he wasn't really in the mix. So it was really Thomas and Finnegan. And the line from Rizzo at the end of the trade deadline was, ultimately, nobody else valued those two guys the same way that we valued them, and so he did not move them. So that's really the question now. Clearly, the Royals value Hunter Harvey, a Royals team that's trying to get in the race this year. So they made an offer that Mike Rizzo says, yeah, I got to do that. Do other teams value Kyle Finnegan and Lane Thomas the same way? If they do, and they make an offer commensurate to this, I think if you're Mike Rizzo, yes, you are looking to make those moves. So I do think this opens the door. It certainly says they are willing to consider offers for both of those guys. And it does kind of change the perspective here. I think there's an understanding that, yes, they've kind of hung around the fringes of this race so far this summer, but the ultimate goal is still 2025 and beyond. And so moves are still being made that prioritize the future versus the present. Now, the one thing I'd say, as far as the Hunter Harvey trade's concerned, and if they do trade Finnegan as well, it can be a smart move. It can be, as you just said, a great example of acquiring somebody for nothing, getting good production out of them, and then flipping them into pieces that are going to help you down the road. 100%, that's what rebuilding teams should do. But let's check back here next summer. And if the Nationals are in a pennant race and have a bullpen that's blowing games because they had to restart and build a whole new bullpen again and struggled at that, as we've seen them do in the past, we may find ourselves saying, boy, it'd be kind of nice to have Kyle Finnegan and Hunter Harvey right now, would it not? So you're not talking about 2 or 3 years down the road that you're trying to win. I believe this team believes it's going to be trying to win next year. They've made a move here that may help them in the long run for sure, but it's also going to create a little bit more of a challenge now as they assemble what they hope is a winning roster this winter going into 2025.
Yeah, for sure. I would say 2 things. Number one, if this front office is what it should be, then it can fix the bullpen again this coming offseason. That's what good front offices can do. And number 2, I love what Finnegan and Harvey have done this season for the Nats, but it's not like they've been great every season. Like Finnegan this season has been at a level he has never been at before. So I don't know that we should count on him being at that level moving forward. So if they do trade him, which I think is the right move, I think you're selling high. And if you kept him for next season, it might be that he's great again next season. It might also be that he's coming back down to earth next season. Regarding the third base hierarchy for the Nats now. So Brady House clearly is the third baseman of the future. If you look at prospect rankings, he's well above Cayden Wallace. And the Nats also have Yo-Yo Morales, who's listed as a third baseman / first baseman. So you could argue Cayden Wallace is the number 3 third base prospect now in the organization. Do you think it's kind of like, hey, you can never have too many good prospects at any position, and so kind of just see how it plays out? Worst case scenario, you maybe can use Cayden Wallace as a trade chip. What do you think they're thinking in getting yet another, at least decently regarded third base prospect?
Well, sometimes it's who's being offered to you, and you say, okay, this is somebody who we think can turn into a good player, and maybe it's at third base, maybe it's somewhere else. You don't know. There's always opportunities to move guys around. You don't know for sure how this is going to go for Brady House, whether at third base or somewhere else. And Yo-Yo Morales has been okay, but hasn't really hit the way they sort of hoped that he would. Now, I mean, he was just drafted last summer. He's already at AA. So, it's still kind of on a fast track and you're not going to give up on him like that. So it is interesting that it would happen to be a third baseman. Now, the deal with Cayden Wallace, a second-round pick in 2022 out of Arkansas, got off to a decent start this year, 777 OPS at AA, and then suffered an oblique strain in late May. And he's actually been on the minor league IL ever since. Now, the good news, he started a rehab assignment about 2 weeks ago. The bad news, about 1 week ago, he got hit by a pitch and fractured a rib. So he's out for at least a little while longer. He's not healthy at this exact moment. The reports were that he should be back sometime in August. So if and when that happens, you're probably putting him now at AA to be your third baseman there, with House at AAA. And as we've discussed, maybe reaching the big leagues before the end of the season. The book on Wallace, the little bit that I've read so far, suggests that he's a pretty good defensive third baseman. So I do find that interesting. Brady House obviously is a hit tool, the main thing with him. He's learned third base. By all accounts, he's done a good job there. But maybe there's some thinking here that if Brady House does not prove once he gets to this level to be the kind of defensive third baseman they hoped he would be, but the bat still plays, you can find somewhere else for him, whether it's first base or DH. You can see how this all goes. Maybe Wallace has the ability to play another position. I don't know this for a fact. I'm just learning about him, but maybe there's some thought process there too. So I think ultimately it's just about acquiring somebody who looks like a good prospect, who was available. Maybe the fact he's on the IL helped make him available right now, and he wouldn't have been otherwise. And then you let these guys play and you see how it works out. And by the way, we haven't even mentioned Trey Lipscomb, who is getting a shot in the big leagues and had a nice game on Friday, not so much on Saturday. Does he still figure into the picture? So what they've done is give themselves options there, and they aren't just married to one prospect hoping that he works out. They obviously hope that he does, but if Brady House doesn't, there are some fallback options here if he doesn't.
A wild Saturday for the Nats. And oh, by the way, as rough as things had been in recent days, the Nats now can go into the All-Star break potentially with a 3-game sweep at the NL Central leading Milwaukee Brewers, and the Nats' best starting pitcher so far this season, Jake Irvin, who, yes, is coming off a rough outing, will be the Nats' starting pitcher for Game 3 of this series on Sunday afternoon at 2:10. You can hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can email the podcast, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us at natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. Nats Chat is on the radio Sunday morning 9 to 10 on ESPN Richmond, which is 106.1 FM in the Richmond, Virginia area, and Sunday morning 9 to 10 on Priority Sports Radio 94.1 in the Virginia Beach area. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
1-1, high in the air, deep towards left field. Did he get all of it? At the wall, Gray Jr. looks up, and it's gone! Cayden Wallace blasts Quad Cities into the lead with a 3-run jack. 4-2 Bandits here in the third.
I'm Xavier Worthy, wide receiver, 4th NFL. Speeding. It's a rush on the field, in the zone, where it matters. As an athlete, I push my limits to win. But when I get behind the wheel, I know the importance of slowing down for safety. Because speeding is illegal. It endangers you, your loved ones, and everyone else on the road. Did you know speeding accounts for more than 1/4 of all traffic-related fatalities nationwide? Just like we need to focus to score touchdowns and win games, we need to be in the zone to stay safe on the road. Speed limits are in place to protect everyone, no matter what the speed limit is. Anything over is not only illegal, but dangerous. Like athletes, drivers must stay alert and present, because there is no reward for speeding. Nothing is safe about it. Driving over the speed limit might seem like the quicker option, but speeding catches up with you. Stay focused. In a split second, everything can change. Paid for by NHTSA.